The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Game Podcast Network is brought to you by Mike Fantasy. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to give you a percent deposit bonus up to $1,000. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Game Podcast Network. It is currently Saturday morning, roughly 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time on January 18th. And our host, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the round of 16 in the Men's Australian Open. So we're going to preview some, not all, of the matches there in the upcoming few, I'd say that's going to be taking place over the next few days. Either way, before we do that, though, do want to quickly recap what happened in the last episode, both for the lock and dog picks and for the actual recap of the third round as a whole. So starting off with the lock and dog, basically the same as last episode. Overall, the episode I think was fine. Ended up hitting some plays, ended up losing some others, but either way, ended up splitting the lock and dog. We ended up losing the lock. We had Djokovic and Makic over 35.5 games at minus 116. Ended up basically daring Djokovic to regain old form, and he did. He was fantastic. Really no way around it. Djokovic turned the clock back, had a vintage performance, and Makic really couldn't do anything for the entire match. Either way, though, we have really no regrets about the actual play because of the fact that you're looking at the line differential on FanDuel compared to other books. Every other book had around 37.5 for the total, and yet FanDuel had 35.5. So if you're going to give me 2 free games, I'll take it. Like, I feel like that's definitely a line differential that I kind of have to grab every time. But either way, it didn't work out, as Joker did beat Makic very easily. For the dog, though, nice win. Ended up having a 2-pick set parlay again. Ended up having the Humbert match over 3.5 sets parlayed with the Mensik over 3.5 sets, and that paid out a plus 133. And that was, once again, a bit of a sweat there, as you ended up seeing Mensik probably deserve to win that one in straight sets. Had a couple match points, ended up serving for the match actually at 6-5 in the third set, and he blew it. Completely fell apart. Fokina came back again for the second straight match, 2 sets down, and he was able to win in 5. Either way, though, Fokina fought off a couple of match points, ended up winning the breaker. Phenomenal breaker there in the third set, but he came back from the dead to help cash us the parlay. As for Fees and Humbert, straightforward, ended up splitting the first 2 sets. Now, I do want to point out a little bit of a lesson here if you are still kind of new to tennis betting. Always read the house rules, because for retirements, you want to make sure you're not getting screwed over, because most books, for the sake of the Fees and Humbert match, paid out, because for over 3.5 sets, you technically need at least 1 point to start in the fourth set for that to actually be graded. So if you end up getting a split for the first 2 sets and you're guaranteed 4 sets minimum, some books actually won't pay you. Some books will actually screw you over, because technically you did not play 4 sets. You ended up having a retirement before that took place, even though you automatically won had the match been completed. But for the sake of the actual grading, most books should have graded that out as a winner, because you did get into the fourth set. And with that being the case, that ended up being a win for us. FanDuel graded as a winner. That's why I also do recommend taking the both players to win a set prop instead of the over 3.5, because that way you end up getting a win if you end up getting each guy to win a set, instead of having to worry about retirement, stuff like that. But the point is, the fourth set did start. So if you ended up getting graded a winner, then good, you found a good book for you. If not, you're getting screwed over. So try to find another book. That's my advice for you there. But either way, nice win for us. FanDuel graded as a winner, and that's where we took it. So nice win there for the dog. As for the actual recaps there for the third round, starting off with the first match, you saw Paul end up burying Baena. So that one we thought Baena would actually win a set in, and he had a chance there in the first set, had a chance to actually break there at the end of the first set, didn't do so, and then Paul won the tiebreak via bagel 7-0, and then he buried him the rest of the way. Alcaraz beat Borges in 4. He had a little bit of a stumble there in the third set, but looked pretty dominant nonetheless. You saw Zverev beat Fernley in straight sets. That we did call. Thought that Fernley was playing well, but I thought the competition was a bit weak, and I thought Zverev was playing in great form, as he did end up looking the part as he won in straight sets. I think Fernley was battling an injury as well. He called for the doctor pretty early on, and either way, Zverev ended up getting the job done there in straight sets. Fokina came back from the dead again, down 2 sets and a couple match points there in the third set, as he came back and he ended up winning in 5. Mensik, you could tell his body was starting to fall apart at the, I'd say, beginning of the fourth set. And at that point, Fokina sensed blood in the water, and he came back and he eventually did win in 5. Heartbreaker for Mensik bettors, but for us, with the over 3.5 sets, can't complain there. Fokina keeps coming back and winning these marathon matches. Now, for the actual matches that took place on Friday, Humbert ended up winning via retirement in the fourth set. Once again, we had the over 3.5 sets. They got there anyway, but Humbert, we do have to win the quarter. So overall, he ended up surviving, and that future is still alive. Joker ended up beating Makic in straight sets. Pretty comfortable. I mean, no way around it. You saw Leheshka beat Bonzi in straight sets. Draper ended up beating Vukic in 5. I still can't believe that the over 3.5 sets in that match was like minus 125. That was an absolute gift. In hindsight, that probably should have been my lock instead. because I just thought the price was insane. We ended up getting greedy because, once again, FanDuel went rogue and gave us 2 free games on an over for the Djokovic match. But either way, point is, I thought that price was insane. It felt like it was very disrespectful to Vukic in front of the Australian fans. And either way, Draper came back and he won the final 2 sets via tiebreak. So Vukic had a chance to win it there and ended up not doing so. Nice win for Draper, but the point is Vukic was definitely live, and the overall money line price and the total games and the overall over sets was definitely mispriced, and we were right on that one. For the other matches, I saw Mickelson kill Kashanov. Did not see that coming. 1 in straight sets. Thought that Kashanov would end up winning at least a set. I thought he'd win the match. But either way, point is, I don't think we covered that on the last episode, but I thought Mickelson would probably end up losing, and he did not. He looked fantastic. Monfils ended up beating Fritz. Great job by him. Lost the first set, ended up winning a couple of close sets there in the second and third. Then it seemed like he was running out of gas. Fritz had a couple of break points early in the fourth set. Monfils seemed to be hunching over a bit more, so you're wondering about fatigue or if he was injured with a foot thing. Either way, though, he got by as he ended up pulling off the upset, winning in 4. He's 38 years old, and he's 1 match away from a Grand Slam. He's from a Grand Slam Grand Slam semi. So once again, it's kind of wild to think about that 2 matches away. So right now he's in the round of 16. He can make a quarterfinal of 38 in Australia. That's definitely impressive. But Monfils has been doing very well in this tournament. We saw him win in the previous week, which we ended up backing him in that event. So overall, nice job by Monfils, as Fritz ended up falling short. The real story of that match, though, just seems to be Fritz's lack of overall variety. Felt like Monfils was able to really just deflect back all of Fritz's power shots. And once that happened, Fritz really had no plan B. It felt like Fritz was trying to overpower Monfils. Monfils wasn't having it. He threw in some drop shots, was changing up the depth, was changing up the overall serve position. Felt like he was constantly getting free points with the serve out wide in particular. But either way, point is Monfils just had more variety. Fritz, I get that he's a good player and all. It does still feel like he's, I don't want to say one-dimensional, because that's a bit harsh. But I do feel like Fritz needs to work on either the volley game, I'd say mid-court position game. Felt like Monfils kept putting him in positions where he wasn't very comfortable, especially with I'd say, short pickup volley, where he kind of had to go for some half volleys, and it felt like Fritz never hit any of those shots over the course of the match. But Monfils, I thought, played a great overall match, had a great game plan. He served well, but most importantly, it felt like he had a great overall strategy to force Fritz to do things he wasn't comfortable doing, and Fritz failed. So nice job on Monfils, having a nice game plan, and then you ended up seeing his wife, Svitolina, actually went on the same court in 3 in the match right after it, which is kind of cool. You had a husband and wife playing on the same court right after each other. The point is, Monfils had a nice win there, and he pulled off the upset in that one. Besides that, you had de Minaur beating Cerundolo in 4. Fun match, definitely competitive early on. Then it felt like Cerundolo eventually just, I don't want to say was exhausted, but it felt like the unforced error count started to climb, and de Minaur outlasted him. Kind of what I expected. Thought de Minaur would win in 3 or 4. He ended up winning in 4. Sonego got the job done there against Morozen. Fun match. I thought that the match was going to be competitive. Thought Sonego would end up winning. But either way, point is, I don't think I covered that in the last episode. Thought Sonego was the overall, I'd say, player in better form. And they got the job done there. Morozen had a couple of competitive matches, going 5 sets against Tiafoe in the last round, and he went to 5 sets against Seaboth Wild in the first round. So fatigue could be an issue, but either way, Sonego kind of dominated after he won the second set via tiebreak, as he won the last 2 sets 6-1 and 6-2. Tien ended up beating Moutet in that one in straight sets. Thought that would end up going over. I did like Tien in the match, but I thought it'd probably go 4 or 5. And you saw Moutet have a couple chances there in the first set. The first set tiebreak was insane, but Tien got the job done, and then Moutet ended up cramping. He couldn't really serve, and it felt like Tien was just too sharp with his actual consistency. Moutet, we know, is not afraid of long rallies, but his drop shot game and his overall variety can sometimes be used as a way to bail out of long rallies, and it felt like Tien just outlasted Moutet, forced the mistake, and Moutet eventually had a mental breakdown, followed by cramping, which ended up resulting in him falling behind early in the third set. Ended up fighting back, though, to some degree, had a couple break points actually late to get even. Did not convert, and Tien got the job done there in straight sets. So nice run there by the qualifier, who was able to make it all the way to the round of 16. Moving on, I saw Shelton beat Musetti in 4. Thought Musetti would win that one, but I did like the over that got there, as that was an absolute war. Shelton was up a break, though, in the 4th, ended up giving it back. Musetti and Shelton took turns mini-breaking each other to start in the breaker, but Shelton eventually had a very nice, I'd say, volley where he was able to get a nice read, where he kind of butchered a drop shot, Musetti was running off court, hit a powerful backhand, and Shelton deflected it to land inside the baseline. So overall, that was kind of the point that decided the match for me. Sinner beat Giron in straight sets. Not a shock there. Sinner dropped the set to Schoolcat. We know that he's still the best hardcourt player in the world. Giron, not many weapons offensively. Solid player, but it just felt like Sinner had too much firepower, and Giron really had no answer. And for the last match, we were right about this one. Liked Rune to win, and both players won a set in the match against Kecmanovic as he came back from 2-1 down, as he ended up winning in 5. Every Rune match feels the exact same, where he's going to struggle early. He'll have a mental breakdown or two in some sets, then eventually he'll settle in and he'll be able to outlast the opposition in 5. That happened again in this one. It's been kind of his MO for the entire tournament, as Rune so far in the event has dropped a lot of sets. Ended up going to 5 sets against Zheng, 4 sets against Berrettini, and 5 sets against Kecmanovic. But either way, point is Rune did outlast him, and we cashed a nice plus 150, plus 160 play there with Rune to win and both players to win a set. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the actual third round recap there. Nothing else to really add. Before we get into the actual preview of the fourth round, I want to remember once again that you can't just support for the show by subscribing on YouTube. Remind you can also leave a rating and a review for the podcast on Spotify or Apple. So if you do want to show support audio only and you don't want to catch it on YouTube, you can still catch it audio only on those platforms. So don't forget to leave a rating and a review when you do so. Plus, a reminder, check out the merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great Tennis Game Podcast merch. We have sweatshirts, t-shirts, and mugs, all high quality, affordable. Recommend getting something because we have different colors as well for the shirts. So if you do want to get some variety, we have that as well on the merch store. Not just for this show, but for the other shows of the network. We have the MLB show, NBA show, pretty much any sport you could think of. There's a podcast for it on the network, and you can also find merchandise on the merch store for any of those shows. Now, a reminder as well, we do have a great app right now, which is free to download on the App Store. Get this SGPN app for instant access to all the podcasts and all the free picks on the network. Also a reminder that we are brought to you by DraftKings, because DraftKings is a great place to stop by for the playoffs. Talk about the playoffs. Yes, we are. You have a couple games going on today, actually, in Kansas City and in Detroit. And if you want to get in on the action, you can also go to DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. A reminder, though, that you can score touchdowns, and you can also bet on touchdowns. So keep that in mind. You can score big when you bet on them on DraftKings, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like a player to score a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook's app and make your picks. Or you can also use the actual website, whichever one works for you. But the app is pretty convenient. A reminder, though, that when you do sign up for a new account, we have a great promo going on. New customers will get $5. Well, bet $5 to get $200 of bonus bets instantly. Once again, bet $5 to win $200, which is a great deal. Download the app. Use code SGP. That's code SGP for new customers. You get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Just finished recapping what happened in the third round. Time to move on into the round of 16. Starting off with the first match we're going to talk about. A reminder, we're going to be skipping a couple matches, though, because we do have the lock and dog picks. We are going to save some for the end of the show. Starting off, though, with the Fokina and Paul match. For this one, Paul's a decent favorite. Paul's about minus 340. Fokina's around plus 285. For the game spread here, you have Paul minus 6. You have Fokina plus 6. The over-under is set at 37. Now, for the actual set spread, Paul, you have minus 1.5 sets at minus 180. You have Fokina plus 1.5 sets at plus 150. Paul in straight sets is plus 170. Fokina to win ace sets minus 210. The over 3.5 sets is set at around minus 150. Now, for the head-to-head, Paul's been great against Fokina. He's currently 3-0. However, there have been some sets being dropped. They faced off in 2 Grand Slams in the past. Faced off in the U.S. Open in 2023, and Paul did win that one in 4. Faced off in the Australian Open as well in 2023, and Paul did win in 5. Actually trailed 2-1, came back and eventually did win. And in between those 2 matches, you had 2 sets in Miami, which Paul did end up winning. So for the path, Paul's been great so far in the event. Did end up, I'd say it's been looking sharper as the event's gone on. Beat O'Connell in 5. Should have won in 4. Choked the 4th set, but still won in 5. Beat Nishikori in 4. Seemed like Nishikori was kind of running out of gas, and Paul buried him in the final 3 sets. And they ended up beating Baena. Kind of similar story to the first set against Nishikori, where it was a tiebreak. This one he won, but the set was competitive. Then eventually you just saw him bury the opposition from that point forward. Now, for Fekina, he has been the comeback king. Ended up beating Shang in the first round in basically a set and a half because Shang ended up getting injured again and had to retire. Then beat Felix down 2-0, came back and won in 5, and beat Mensik down 2 sets and a couple match points and won that one in 5 as well. So Fekina has been a marathon man, but the problem is I think Paul is definitely consistent enough to go up 2 sets and not choke. So Fekina, you still have to have some conversations about the shot selection and the overall, I'd say, mental toughness. But the mental toughness has been there because he has been able to come back from the brink on 2 consecutive matches. But the point is, I think Paul is a bad matchup for Fekina. Mensik, a powerful server, but he's still young and experienced, and it does seem like Mensik, when he gets pushed, does blink in big moments, and we saw that again in that match as he choked serving for the match. The point is, I think you're looking at a spot where Paul should be able to win this match in either straight sets or in 4. Fekina cannot keep getting away with dropping sets and then coming back and winning. And I think Paul, unlike Mensik and Felix, will be more ruthless when he goes up. So the problem is trying to find value for this matchup because I don't really trust Paul enough to win in straight sets. You could argue about fatigue for Fekina. I think he actually called for the trainer early in that match with a shoulder issue, and then he was able to get through it. But the point is, I do wonder how Fekina's body's going to be feeling after having back-to-back 5-setters, while Paul was able to win in straight sets against Baena in the last match. But Paul, once again, being a massive favorite, tough to find value because I do think Paul can drop a set here. The over 3.5 sets at -150. I understand it, but like, do I like the price? Not really. You can throw it in a parlay, I guess, but I'm not really that interested in that one. You can take Paul to win and both players to win a set at +134. That I don't hate, but I think Paul could win in straight sets, which makes it a little bit dicey. And once again, that's kind of why I'm having an issue actually finding stuff in this matchup. I think what I am going to go with for this one is going to be the Fekina team total under at 17.5. Yes, I understand he can win some sets against Paul. He's done so in Grand Slams, but I think Paul is, of course, the more rested guy because he's played less tennis, and I do think that Fekina keeps dropping sets, which is concerning. But Paul has played very well as the matches have gone on. I thought he looked fantastic against Baena in the last 2 sets, and I think that eventually Fekina will be unable to dig himself out of a hole. But if he falls behind again, 2-0, there's no guarantee he's going to end up winning any sets in this one. You're looking at the last meeting, though, which took place in the U.S. Open in 2023, and even though it did go 4, Paul did win the first 2 sets 6-1, 6-0. So even though it did go to 4 sets, Fekina won a grand total of 10 games. So once again, I think Paul can win this one, even dropping a set, and Fekina goes under, because I do expect at least one lopsided set. You're looking at both guys being able to break. You're looking at Fekina, whose serve can be, I'd say, vulnerable at times, and you're looking at Paul, who I think can once again return well against Fekina. So with that being the case, 17.5, even if Fekina does win 6, you can still, in a set, winning a set, of course, like 6-4 or something, you can still get there if he gets blown out in a set or 2. You can still get a couple of sets that end in like 6-2, potentially 6-3. Once again, if you end up getting 6-3, maybe even some 6-4s here, you can still get to like 15-16. Like if you end up getting, for example, let's say Fekina wins the first set 6-4, and he loses the next couple of sets through 3s, and potentially a 4 or 2, that still gets you to like 15. That's really not that bad. I think 17.5 is pretty high, actually, for a team total here. I'll go with the under on Fekina team total as my favorite play for this one. Moving on to the next matchup, you have a matchup between, once again, going to skip around a little bit, you have Humbert against Zverev. Now, for this one, Zverev's massive favorite, as he should be. Zverev is around... just trying to find the exact price here. Zverev's -550. Humbert's +430. For the game spread, you have -5.5 for Zverev. You have +5.5 for Humbert. The over-under game to set at 36.5 for 37.5. For the set spread, you have Zverev in straight sets at +130. Humbert to win 8 sets, -160. The over 3.5 sets is -135. Now, Humbert's had an interesting path because he has had a pretty interesting road, 2 qualifiers in the first 2 rounds, which you won in straight sets, then ended up losing the first set to Fees, then ended up winning the next 2 sets, and then Fees retired into the 4th. As for Zverev, he's been coasting, was able to beat Puig, once again, a relatively easy schedule there with Pedro Martinez in the second round, ended up beating the likes of Fernley in the 3rd round. So Zverev's been good. However, he really hasn't played anybody worth a damn in the event, and yes, I think Fernley's talented. He's mostly a challenger guy. But Puig, Martinez, and Fernley, and now you face off against the top 20 guy in Humbert. Massive step up in competition. I think that's definitely going to be concerning early on for Zverev. Now, as for Humbert, he had an easy path too, but He did beat Fees. He was winning. Fees ran out of gas, but Fees was playing pretty well over the course of that matchup, and I felt like Humbert was just a little bit too solid. I think that Humbert can win a set here. Do I think he's going to win the match? No. Now, for the head-to-head, Humbert's had some success, not much, but he was able to beat Zverev in the first meeting back on grass in Halle in 2021. Faced off in Paris in 2023. Zverev did win in a final set tiebreak. That did go the distance. Faced off in Paris in the final. Last year, and Zverev did beat Humbert comfortably 6-2, 6-2. But Humbert played a bunch of sets. He was constantly going to 3 sets, and it felt like he was exhausted and ran out of gas in the final. So for this actual matchup, I think Zverev's going to win. I think he's the better player, and I think Humbert's serve is still not great. Yes, he does have that really wicked slice serve out wide, but I do think that Zverev's serve is better, objectively speaking, and I do think that Zverev is, once again, the more talented player by a decent margin. Now, Humbert's feisty, and he's definitely going to show some mental toughness. I think he's not going to go quietly and get buried here, but I do think that Zverev to win in potentially 4 or 5, a match to, once again, go in favor of Zverev and both players who want to set, is plus 134. I like that price quite a bit. I think Zverev probably wins this in 4. If I had to guess, I think Zverev will eventually slip up, maybe in a tiebreak in this match, but I think it's a step-up competition, facing off against a couple of unknowns or even qualifiers, and then facing off against a top 20 guy in the 4th round. Zverev's been good, but I think that it's going to be a test here, and he might have to take a couple of games, maybe a set to adjust to the step-up of competition. I think that you're looking at Humbert, who knows how important it is to come out firing in this match, especially trying to pull off the upset. I think Humbert will build off that performance against Fees. I think he'll look sharp, but I think that you're looking at a match that should eventually go in favor of Zverev consistency, but that will go long. So I am going to go with Zverev to win this match and the, once again, match to go 4 or 5. So once again, you're looking at Zverev to win the match, and both players win a set at plus 134 on FanDuel. Moving on to the next match we're going to talk about. You have a match between Djokovic and Lehecka. Now, for this one, Joker is a pretty decent favorite. Joker is around minus 400. You have Lehecka at plus 320. For the game spread here, you have minus 5.5 for Djokovic, plus 5.5 for Lehecka. The over-under in games set at 37.5. For the set spread here, you have Joker minus 1.5 sets at minus 180. You have Lehecka plus 1.5 sets at around plus 150. For the 2.5 sets here, you have Joker in straight sets at plus 155. For the over-under in sets, you have the over 3.5 at minus 150. The under set at plus 120. Now, for the head-to-head history, you saw Joker beat Lehecka in the first meeting. It was actually this year in the United Cup. It was last year in the United Cup, and Joker did win that one in 3 sets. Weird match, though, because Joker won the first set and the third set 6-1 and lost the middle set 7-6. So they faced off about a year ago, which I don't know if that matters. I know Joker was injured in that event because he lost to de Minaur the round after. But I think you're looking at Joker, who, if he plays the way he did against Makic, will win pretty comfortably, in my opinion. Now, Lehecka, I think, is a solid player. We saw him win a title as well, like Monfils right before the Australian Open. But his opponents have been pretty weak. I ended up beating Lee 2 in 4 sets in the first round. Gaston got injured, ended up quitting, and ended up beating Bonzi in straight sets. Did kill Bonzi, and Bonzi's been playing good tennis for the last couple months, but I do think the step up competition, obviously, facing off against Djokovic. I wonder how big of a step up it is from Makic to Lehecka. I think Lehecka's better. I think style-wise, they're pretty comparable. So I actually think that facing Makic is a decent prep match for Joker for Lehecka in this round. Now, Lehecka, I think, is better. He has a bit more firepower, a bit more consistency, and the serve's better, I think, than Makic. But I think for this matchup, Joker, I just think, is a pretty bad matchup for Lehecka. And if Joker is more aggressive, like he was in that match against Makic in the 3rd round, Joker, I think, realized I can't keep dropping sets to people. I'm being too passive behind the baseline. I have to force the issue a bit more. And he was very successful against Makic. Felt like he was constantly on the back foot in that matchup, and Joker was able to take early control of a lot of rallies. I see a pretty similar story here. I think Lehecka will fight for, once again, a couple sets here, maybe a couple 6-4s, maybe a tiebreak in there. But I think that Joker found a certain, I'd say, strategy and a certain overall aggressiveness that he wants to maintain over the course of the rest of this event, and I think he's going to end up pulling it off again. I think Lehecka has played really well, but the competition's been weak. I think that facing Makic is a pretty good comparison to face, or a pretty good prep match, once again, to facing off against Lehecka, and I think that Joker will be able to get the job done. Maybe in straight sets, if you want to go for actual games here. Thought about maybe going with the under, but I don't know if I want to, because I think you might end up seeing a break or two, and it could go 4 in theory. I don't have much for this match, actually. If I had to go for anything, I think I'd probably go for Joker minus 5.5 games. I don't feel great about it, though. Like, I really don't at all. So I'm kind of going to stay away from it from a betting perspective, but I think that Joker's going to win, and I think Lehecka will fight for maybe a set, kind of like what you saw from Basaveretti and from Faria, where they have one set where they break through, but the other sets are pretty straightforward. That's kind of what I'm expecting here. So maybe I'll go with the Fekina route, and I'll go with the team total under for, once again, Lehecka at around 17.5, picking him to maybe win a set and still go under if he gets buried in the other sets, which could be a possibility. So I think I'll do that. Give me Lehecka team total under 17.5 in that matchup. Now moving on to the next match here. I am, once again, a couple lines short, actually, but I'll do my best. So for this one, you have Mikkelsen against de Minaur. Now, for this one, de Minaur is decent favorite. He's around minus 400. Mikkelsen is around plus 300. Now, the head-to-head has been interesting, actually, as de Minaur ended up beating Mikkelsen comfortably in the French Open last year, dropping 3 games total. But Mikkelsen, we know, is not very good on clay. However, faced off last year as well in Mexico, in Los Cabos, and you saw Mikkelsen win 6-4, 6-1. Now, for the event so far, Mikkelsen's been getting better as the event's going on. Beat Tsitsipas in 4 in the first round, ended up beating McCabe in straight sets and beat Khachanov in straight sets. As for de Minaur, ended up winning the first 2 matches in straight sets against Dzanchulp and against Boyer, then ended up beating Cerundolo in 4. Now, for the matchup itself, I think I am going to go with de Minaur. I do think that with the Australian crowd behind him, I think it'll look sharp. And Mikkelsen, I've played basically a perfect match against Khachanov. I think he'll be able to, I think he'll be unable to replicate that quality against de Minaur. So give me de Minaur in this one. I do think both players want a set, though. I think it's not going to be easy. I think Mikkelsen can maybe even push at 5. So I was trying to find de Minaur and both players want a set, but unfortunately, FanDuel didn't post that market yet. So I can't exactly bet it without knowing the price, but that's my favorite play when it does get posted. Give me Mikkelsen to lose the match, but to keep it close, give me de Minaur to win, and both players win a set as my favorite play in that one. Moving on to the next matchup, you have Monfils against Shelton. For this one, Shelton's about minus 160. You have Monfils around plus 135 or so. For the head-to-head, no head-to-head history. Now, Monfils has been great. Was able to beat Fritz in 4, ended up beating Altmaier in straight sets, and ended up beating Perricard in 5. As for Shelton, went to 4 sets against Musetti, went to 4 sets against Busta, and ended up beating Nakashima in straight sets. Now, the problem you run into, though, for the sake of this match for Monfils, he's still up there in years. He's 38, and he's played a couple of very physically grueling matches against Perricard and against Fritz. So you are wondering how physically he's going to hold up for this one. Seemed like he was a bit compromised physically at the end of that match against Fritz, but he was able to keep it together as he did win in 4. Now, Shelton has been good, especially with the serve, but the question is, will he be able to showcase the rally tolerance by, I'd say, potentially getting himself into some long rounds with Monfils? Now, Monfils has been serving well, which has gotten into some good spots. Now, you're looking at Shelton, who I think is once again a good server, but is he a great returner? Not really. So the question is, do I think Shelton can force enough breakpoint chances to convert and eventually win this match? The truth is, if Monfils is not fully compromised physically, I think he's alive to win this. Monfils has been looking really, really good, and beating a top 5 player in the world in Fritz, I think is a testament to that, and I think Fritz is a better player than Shelton. So the argument is, if Monfils looks that good again in this round, I think he's going to win. Now, the question is, can he replicate it? I don't know. That's the question mark here. For this one, give me the over. I think you see a marathon here. I think both guys kill each other. Could go 5 sets, but I think you're looking at a breaker or 2. I think you're looking at a couple of very competitive sets that could go either way. And I think you're looking at what should be a match where each player wins at least 1. But for this one, I think I am going to go with the over. I think you're going to see a close matchup, but I think you're looking at a spot where Monfils can win it. Maybe he falls short, but I think it's going to be a very tough battle either way. I don't see either guy winning in straight sets. If you want to go for Shelton to win and you don't want to pay 160, maybe take, once again, him to win and both players win a set. Not available, though, on FanDuel yet, so wait for that market. As for Monfils, same thing. If you want to get a better price than plus 135, plus 140, wait for that prop, and you can take that instead, because I don't see either guy winning in straight sets. Moving on to the next matchup, you have a matchup between Sinner and Rune. For this one, Sinner's about minus 1,200. Rune's around plus 700. Head-to-head, it's really interesting, as it's currently tied 2-2. Now, it's a bit misleading, because Rune was able to beat Sinner in the first 2 matches back in 2022 and 2023. That was in Monte Carlo, the last one, which was a clay match. However, faced off in the ATP Finals in 2023. Sinner won in 3. Faced off in Monte Carlo again, 2024, and Sinner did win in 3 sets. So the point is, Sinner's been able to explode and blossom into the best hardcourt player in the world. As for Rune, he's been dropping sets left and right. In fact, he's played 14 of the 15 maximum sets you can play in the first 3 rounds, because he ended up going 5 against Kmanovic, went 5 against Zhang, did beat Berrettini in 4. Sinner, though, I just think is going to be too solid. I think Rune still has the lapses where he tends to punt sets. He tends to try to conserve energy, or he tends to kind of, I'd say, I don't want to say channel his mental energy, but you get what I'm trying to say. He has a lot of overall, I'd say, frustration over the course of matches, and then he kind of buckles down late. The issue is I think Sinner's going to be out for blood early. I think he'll stick with what he did against Giron, trying to get out to an early lead, trying to force the, I'd say, defensive. I'll put it this way. I think he's going to end up being the aggressor in a lot of these rallies, and that Rune eventually is going to be forced into running around the court, which should drain the legs after going 5 sets in about 3+ hours against Kecmanovic in the last round. Think it was able to work out against weaker competition, but against Sinner, that's not going to fly. Zhang, Berrettini, and Kecmanovic, though, were all talented, so that is a really difficult draw for Rune. Props to him for getting through it. But Sinner has only dropped 1 set. He really has not been on the court for that long in these matches, and I think that's going to work to his benefit here. I think Sinner wins in straight sets. The argument is Rune maybe can sneak 1 because he's done so in every match of their careers, but Sinner, I think, has been a lot better, especially on hard court, and they faced off in April last year. Sinner really kind of hit the ground running. Yes, he won the Australian Open, but that was on clay, and I do think that Sinner on hard court has kind of found the, I'd say, perfect game for him, for his, I'd say, skill set to dominate. And I think that Rune is going to be, once again, struggling to actually make a dent in a lot of these games. So I am going to go with Sinner in straight sets. Rune might just be completely out of gas. If Rune was, I'd say, forcing a pretty competitive set in the first set or two, would not shock me. But if Sinner goes up 1-0 or 2-0, I do question how much, I'd say, stamina Rune has left in the tank and his mental toughness, knowing I got to beat this guy who basically never loses on hard court in 3 out of the next 4 sets or 3 out of the next 3 sets. That might be a little bit too much for Rune mentally to handle. And I think that if Sinner goes up early, Rune has a chance of folding. So I'll go with Sinner in straight sets in this one. Not much value, though. Don't see much there, but I'll go with Sinner to win that one in straight sets. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the actual preview of the round of 16. Once again, saving a couple matches for the end of the show. Now it's time for the lock and dog pick. For that, though, I want to remember once again that we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy because they have a lot of great items on their pick menu. They have a lot of ways to make money easily with profit boosts and also give me pick'ems. They have the NFL, college football, college basketball, MMA, NBA, NASCAR, and more. You can also use specials and boosts on Netflix entries. For my entry, think I am going to go with Austin Eckler higher on his receiving yards in that game against Detroit. They're expected to lose pretty comfortably. It's in a dome. I see a lot of check downs. It's going to be Eckler to have a pretty decent game in the passing game. His receiving yards are pretty low, like 23.5, 24.5. I think that's pretty low. I'll go with the higher on that one. Reminder, though, when you do sign up for your new account, use the promo code SGPN. So promo code SGPN to claim a special pick in your first time deposit offer up to 1K. Bonus cash on fantasy promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Just finished going through the round of 16 in this round open. Now it's time for the lock and dog pick. So you might notice I skipped 2 matches. I skipped the Alcaraz match, and I ended up skipping the Sonego match against Tien. For the lock, I am going to go with Alcaraz in straight sets at -120. Now, I am aware Draper's had some success against Alcaraz in the past, but I do think the stamina is a serious concern for Draper, who's had multiple retirements over the course of his career, and I think it's a really bad spot for him. Now, Draper, I said before, Rune has played 14 of the 15 possible sets you can play in the first 3 rounds. Draper said, hold my beer, because he's played 15 out of 15 sets. Each of his first 3-round matches went to 5 sets. He ended up facing off against Vukic. The match was 4 hours, went to a final set tiebreak. I think fatigue will be a serious issue for Draper. Now, Alcaraz also good in the head-to-head against Draper on hard court, ended up beating him twice on hard court. The one loss was on grass. But you're looking at Alcaraz, dropped 1 set the entire event. I think you're looking at Alcaraz, who's looked very good for the most part in this event. Had a bit of a mental lapse there against Borges in that 3rd set. He ended up coming back and dominating the 4th. Point is, Alcaraz, I think, has a little bit of, I'd say, a chip on his shoulder after dropping a set to Borges. I think he'll be focused on trying to maintain his level for all 3 sets here, trying to limit the amount of time on court. And Draper, I think, is going to be really, really, I'd say, underwhelming based on expectation, because based on his overall stamina, and I think the lack thereof in this case, Alcaraz really might make his life difficult, make him run around. That's what I would do. I would make Draper run around the entire time. Draper may force a breaker, but I think for the sake of this matchup, fading a guy that's played 3 straight 5-set matches, including a 4-hour marathon in the last round, I think is a bit problematic for Draper here in the spot. I think it's a good spot for Alcaraz. Also, competition-wise, you're looking at Draper, who really has had a couple marathon matches against relatively fine competition. Like, Navone is more of a clay guy. 5 sets, okay. Kokkinakis is dangerous, so that did go 5, makes sense. Vukic, though, is also, kind of dangerous. I think that Kokkinakis might be viewed as a bit more threatening than Vukic, in a potential hardcourt match. That went 5-2. But you're going 5 sets, and your best opponent so far has been Kokkinakis. That's not exactly ideal. I think Alcaraz, once again, is a massive step of competition. I think that Alcaraz should look sharp, and I think that he's going to end up winning this one in straight sets. Minus 120, I think it's a good price. I'll take that as my lock for the show. Now, for the dog, I am going to admit, for the Sonego and Tien match, I found a great dog. However, the problem was I found it last night, and I was waiting for the Rune match to end, and I woke up this morning, and the price was gone. So initially, Tien was a favorite, actually, against Sonego. I saw on Bet Rivers, Sonego was plus 125 on the money line, which I loved. That was going to be my dog. However, I woke up this morning, and the line moved 60 cents, as Sonego is now about minus 135, minus 140. So I missed out on Sonego money line as the dog here by a couple hours, so apologies there. However, I am going to go with a bit of a bolder stance at plus money as well. I'm going to go with Sonego minus 2.5 games at a plus 110 against Tien as my dog. Now, Sonego, I think, has played very well so far in the event. He's been a very notable wild card over the course of the last few years, where if he's on, he's really good, and if he's bad, damn, he's really bad. But he's been really good lately. So I think that Sonego has kind of found his groove. We backed him to win a title last year, and he has definitely looked the part once again here in Australia. Now, for the actual event so far, beat Wawrinka, beat Fonseca, beat Morozin. Pretty tough road so far. I know Wawrinka is not the guy he used to be, but it's Wawrinka first round with rest. That's dangerous, and he was able to win that one. Fonseca was the, of course, teen phenom who beat Rublev in straight sets, and Sonego beat him in 5. He was a pretty decent dog in that match, too, and he eventually did win that one in 5 and beat Morozin comfortably in the last 2 sets, winning in 4. As for Tien, he's been very good. Beat Carabelli in 5, more of a clay guy. Beat Medvedev in 5, and then beating Mutet in 3. So the 3 sets definitely helps with his overall stamina because he had to go 5-set marathon in each of the first 2 rounds. However, I think Sonego is a different style of player than what we've seen from Tien's first 3 opponents. Looking at the guys once again, Carabelli is more of a clay guy, does have a bit of firepower, mostly a rallier guy, though Medvedev is an elite hardcore player, but we know he's very passive on the baseline, not going to force the issue, tends to get himself into a bunch of long rallies, and that definitely plays into Tien's hand. Mutet has a bit of variety. No, he doesn't really have much firepower, though. And I think that definitely played into Tien's hands as well, not to mention the cramping that took place for Mutet over the last set. But you're looking at 3 guys that he's faced off against that's mostly into rallying and being pretty passive. Sonego is uber aggressive. He's going to force the issue. He's got a lot of firepower. He will come to the net. I think it's going to be how you beat Tien. Tien's still a short guy. He's undersized, and I think the way to beat him is to push him around the court. You force him to defend off the back foot. You come forward, and you end points quickly. It really plays into Sonego's strengths, and I do think that Sonego, after beating Fonseca, who we saw beat Tien twice in the next-gen finals, and he was able to win that one in 5, I think tells you that Sonego is a bit undervalued here. I think that Sonego, once again, was a dog when the odds dropped initially, which I thought was very disrespectful. And apparently I was right because the line moved 60 cents. But you're looking at Tien, who's been good here. Don't get me wrong, it's impressive to go through qualifying to make it into the round of 16. But I think that facing off against a guy that's a bit more aggressive, a bit more of a stylistic change will hurt Tien. I think Sonego's firepower should be able to give him control of a lot of rallies while also coming to the net to end points quickly. Tien's also not a great server. It's the main flaw in his game. He does have the slice serve out wide, kind of like a Nishioka serve, where it can be vulnerable, but he has one go-to move that can be successful at times. I think Sonego, though, should be able to be the aggressor in a lot of rallies. Yes, the counterpoint is if Tien's able to keep the ball in play, and then Sonego can maybe spray a bunch of shots off the court, which can result in some free points. I think it's a sacrifice that Sonego's going to have to make. I think Sonego will be able to, once again, be focused on controlled aggression, taking control early in rallies and forcing Tien to really, I'd say, get into some uncomfortable spots. So I like the overall matchup for Sonego. I think he'll win this one in maybe 4, but I think that 2.5 games a bit low. Tien, I think, will get buried in one set, maybe losing 6-2 or something. Maybe he punts a set to save energy. Who knows? Either way, though, I think 2.5 games for Sonego is a pretty cheap number, actually. Yes, I like Tien a lot. I think he's a solid player. I also think it's a good sell high spot. I think Sonego is underrated right now, and I'll take him in the spot. So once again, the plays here for the lock and dog for the 4th round here of the Australian Open. Lock's going to be on Alcaraz winning straight sets against Draper at minus 120. For the dog, I am going to go with Sonego minus 2.5 games at plus 110. That's going to wrap it up, though. Back once again for the quarterfinals here on the men's side. Until next time, though, find me on Twitter, Reichel Radio, find me on the NBA show, find me on the MLB show, find me on a bunch of podcasts of the network. And until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.